Good afternoon, and welcome to the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce's Immersive Culinary Experience with Chef Leticia Moreinos Schwartz. Thank you all for attending. It's great.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here today. I know it's a beautiful day today. It's fall. We're celebrating with pumpkin today. I'll tell you briefly about my background as John complimented. Thank you for the introduction. I am the author of 3 cookbooks, 2 of them about Brazilian cuisine, the Brazilian kitchen, and my Rio and Latin superfoods. So today we have a lot to cook, wonderful recipes. We're gonna jump all around the menu because we're gonna start with one, then make the dessert, then make the risotto. And in the meantime, please feel free to come to the camera. We're a small group, so even though this is virtual, we can still feel some, closeness here. If you have questions, comments, suggestions, just come on to the camera and, make your question or whatever you want to say, compliment to the, to the recipe. I'm happy to hear. We're gonna start today with this very interesting, is not as popular as our caipirinha, but quentão is a very typical kind of like alcoholic tea from Brazil. Okay, so we are going to pour water and a whole bunch of spices, like really delicious spices like cinnamon, ginger, lemongrass. Here, lemongrass, some ginger, some cloves, star anise, sugar, 2 limes, and some cinnamon. Let me show you guys how to crush the cinnamon. Basically, it's very simple. To develop the flavor, and release all the aromas from the cinnamon, you just come into the cutting board and you bang it like that. You see how you boom, pop, pop, pop. There you go. Look at that. All our cinnamon. Oh my God, this flavor is amazing. Okay, so we bring that to a boil and then we're gonna let it steep. So because this is pretty much the only thing that we're doing right now, after it boils, then we let it steep and then we are going to add some cachaça. Yes, the national shrine from Brazil. And I'm happy to use this brand. I know that they got sold a few years ago to Diageo, which is an amazing story by itself. There are other brands out there, but when you talk about cachaça, you really are looking for fresh sugarcane aroma, and there are ways to distill the cachaça in different barrels of wood. For each type of wood, it leaves a trace of floral or cinnamon. So depending on the type of wood, the barrel, the cachaça has a different type of aroma. So after this comes to a boil, we're going to add cachaça. And we're going to jump to our next recipe, one of my signature recipes. And I have to say that when I developed this recipe, I was making my Rio de Janeiro. And I went to this restaurant in Rio. It's called Irajá. And they used to serve a hot brigadeiro cake. And I had the idea, wait a second, a hot brigadeiro cake, that rings a bell to me of like a molten brigadeiro cake. Are going to melt 1 stick of butter. So this is what we call in Portuguese the bolinho quente, the petit gâteau. Each each language has a way to call this dessert, right? So I have here melted butter that I'm gonna do. Over here, I have 1 can of sweetened condensed milk that I am going to cook together until a fudgy stage with some chocolate and some cocoa powder. Now, when we make brigadeiro, the interesting thing is, I mean, everybody in Brazil, like, you know, they know about brigadeiro, but believe it or not, a lot of people don't know how to make brigadeiro. If you overcook it, then it becomes too toughy, too hard. But if you undercook it, it becomes too soft and you can't roll it. So the tricky part when making brigadeiro is to know how far to cook, you know? So I'm gonna show you here. Right now, the chocolate is still melting, so it's gonna get a little bit darker. I can hear the butter in the background, so I'm gonna just, woo, splashing. I'm gonna just lower the heat a little bit, and we also have our quentão going. So we got a lot going on at the same time, and that's the sign of a happy kitchen. A lot of things going on. You want to cook the brigadeiro at, like, ideally a slow heat so that it doesn't burn, you know, the bottom of the pan. I don't know if you guys, the Americans in the house, right, familiar with the story behind brigadeiro. There was this political army figure called Eduardo Gomes, and he was, eventually he got to be the candidate for president. And he used to love chocolate, and cooks used to bring this little sweet to his rallies. And they used to call it in the beginning, o docinho do brigadeiro, or the little sweet from the brigadier. And then in time, the name brigadier just stuck rather than the little sweet from the brigadier. You want to be able to swirl around the pan. And do you see that there's like a bottom coating of the pan? That's when you know that the fudge is ready. So we get here, we're going to pour that into our bowl. So this, we don't scrape this. You don't want to scrape this because this is the burn part. We're going to turn our quentão and let it steep for a few minutes, about 20 minutes. We're going to take our melted butter and pour into our brigadeiro paste. So basically that's the combination. We make a brigadeiro paste, and instead of rolling into brigadeiro balls, we make this molten brigadeiro cake. So at first, when you start mixing this, you will think that it cannot go right. I mean, look at this. It is completely curdling, right? But don't worry. Keep mixing and be patient. That's, you know, the nature of cooking. Just keep whisking and it's going to come together. And it already is starting to come together. Look at that. Right? So then after, we are going to break 2 eggs, 2 yolks, and we're going to mix that with here. So let's do this. This is going to be our trash. And we come over here. So 2 eggs. Does anybody have a question? here for the 2 yolks. Look what I do, guys. Instead of breaking the eggs and going like that to separate the yolks, what I like to do is break the eggs in a bowl and then lift the yolks. It goes so much faster, and the chances of you breaking the yolk is so much easier this way. Okay, so now we mix that with some sugar, about 1 tablespoon. And I developed this recipe because 1 tablespoon already with our brigadeiro is all we need. We don't need to make it even sweeter than that, you know? And a pinch of salt and a pinch of about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Then we just mix like that. And then we are going to mix this egg mixture with our brigadeiro mixture. So let me pour this over here. And we go like that. Let me get a spatula. And we pour this. And this is paradise calling. Great thing about it is that you can prepare ahead of time. So for example, you can make this batter, which by the way, we're going to finish just by adding a little bit of flour to hold the mixture together. So we're going to sift the flour so you can make ahead of time. So once you have this batter, you pour into the ramekins. So you want to coat the ramekins really well with butter and flour, but not melted butter, because if you melt the butter, it's going to be so thin, the layer, that it's kind of like risking that when you invert, it's going to stick to the pan. So make sure that when you melt, you want to melt until it's like mayonnaise stage, and then you dust with flour, shake off the excess, and that's pretty much how you want it. So again, you can put this in the refrigerator and leave it there for, 10 days. So we just heat a little bit of olive oil, and we are going to saute this. I made some ahead of time just to save us time, but I just want to show you how simple and fast this is to make at home, So just a little bit of olive oil. We add the butternut. The thing about what's so interesting about the pumpkins in general is that when you buy them, they're really hard. They have a very hard skin. But once you cook them, and you can cook them in a pan like that, you can roast them in the oven, they become really soft and tender and delicate. So there's a big transformation from what you see and what after you cook. So we season with a little bit of salt, pepper, and a little bit of nutmeg. Oh my God, I love nutmeg. Where is my nutmeg? Over here. That's again, one of the things that I love about cooking, guys, is you don't wait until the very end to season things. Whenever there's a lot of people who they'll cook a dish, and after the dish is cooked, then you season. Let's forget about this method. A better method is you season as you cook so that you can develop the flavors from the very beginning. It's a completely different flavor profile when you start from the beginning. And especially because you have the chance to add herbs and spices and all the great things that goes into cooking. Let's get with some onion cooking. So for the onions, I have here some chopped onions, but I do want to show you a little bit of knife skills. Again, let's do a little bit of salt and pepper because we season from the very beginning always now. Everybody season from the very beginning. No more waiting until the recipe is done, right? Okay, so we have an onion and we are going to, let me just show you how easy it is to chop this. Because in my cooking classes, one of the things that I notice the most is that people are afraid of chopping. They think that, oh my God, it takes such a long time to chop, to cook. When you acquire a little bit of knife skills, and the only way to do that is by doing it. You don't need to go to cooking school. You don't need to watch a program. Just grab a knife and do it. You know, you take an onion and you just go like that. First, vertical and then horizontal. Now notice, guys, that my hands are very close to the blade. I don't, like, if you catch the knife all the way from afar, it's like you're afraid of the knife. You're not in control, you know, so you want to grab it almost at the blade. And we're going to add our onion. Here is about translucent. That's what you're looking for. We're going to add arborio rice. That's the typical rice for risotto. There's also carnaroli rice, another typical Italian. And the difference of these two types of rices is because they cook from the outside to the inside. Different than, for example, jasmine rice, basmati rice, they cook evenly. With arborio or carnaroli, you want to look for the al dente, you know, so that's the trick of the risotto. All right, so we want to toast the rice. Again, we are developing flavors of the grain. Okay, then we add a little bit of white wine. It's always good to add a little bit of acidity to the creamy risotto. Over here, I have shrimp stock. So what I like to do is I pretty much do two types of stock. Shrimp, because I never throw the shells away. You know, you just roast the shells and you put cold water. And then in 10 minutes, you have shrimp stock. And chicken stock, because when you go, for example, when my husband, he goes to Costco, then he buys a rotisserie chicken. So instead of throwing the bones away, I say, no, give me the bones. I roast the bones or put it in a pan, throw cold water, and that's my chicken stock. Okay, so we keep stirring that. Let's season with a little bit of salt and pepper. Okay, now that we have a little bit of time with this rice that's cooking, let's put one molten cake in the oven. I don't need to put all 5. Let me take it here. I'm gonna save this for a dinner party, but I do want to cook with you or bake with you at least one so that we can taste it together. I would say it's gonna take about 8 to 10 minutes. It depends on the oven. What's really important in cooking, guys, is to know your oven. So for example, I have 2 ovens in this kitchen. I have this big oven and I have the same thing in a small, like a counter oven. And each oven is different. So once you make this dessert the first time and it comes out right, hopefully, don't give up if it, you know, comes out, it's still delicious. But then you know your oven, you know. So when you see a recipe, when you read a recipe and it says, oh, bake for whatever, 40 minutes, for example, it might, in my oven, it might be 40 minutes. In your oven, it might be 35. And in their oven, it might be 45. So you really want to know what you're looking for rather than relying on what the recipe tells you, you know? Okay, so we keep mixing the risotto every once in a while we come here. And now we're gonna go back to our quentão. Let's see here. And we are going to strain that directly into this jar. And then we're going to add the cachaça. And then what we do is we take the cachaça. So at this point in the recipe, I said add 1 full bottle of cachaça. Let's talk about that, because of course that can be like, whoa, that might be a little too much. If you just want to make the quentão like that and you stop here, that too is an option, you know. But being that we want to do the Brazilian authentic way, let's add the cachaça. Let's add just a little bit more. I'm going to mix that up. Yeah, so I added about half a bottle of cachaça because I'll be the one drinking anyway, so I don't want to get too drunk with that. While that happens, look at us, a million things going on at the same time. We add more broth to the risotto, and over here we're going to just mix this up a little bit. Oh my goodness, it is so good. Oh my goodness, guys, you have to make this quentão. Oh, and by the way, as you prepare these recipes, today, tomorrow, a month from today, 2 months from today, 6 months from today, tag me. One of the most rewarding things is, as a cookbook author, is to see that people are baking my recipes, cooking my recipes, making our risotto, our quentão, our brigadeiro. So please do tag me. And of course, if you have questions for other recipes, feel free. I'm always available. You can find me at chefleticia.com. All my information is there. My email is there. And I'm always supplying recipes because that's what I do. That's what I love to do. Now, let's talk about our risotto, because we're mixing. And we're talking about risotto and quentão and risotto, but there's a lot to talk about risotto. The first point, if you want to substitute shrimp, there's a lot of people who are allergic to shrimp. It's something about it that it's very common. So if you're allergic to shellfish in general, you can skip the protein. You can just do a butternut squash or a pumpkin. We're gonna call it pumpkin, right? A risotto like that. Or if you want to use other shellfish because you're not allergic to scallops, for example, you can do that too. Let's also add a little bit of ground nutmeg to the risotto. It's not because I live in Connecticut. Connecticut is called the nutmeg state, but I happen to love nutmeg. I find that it's one of these warm spices, just like the other spices that we did with the quentão, you know, cinnamon, nutmeg, all spices, they go together, and especially this time of the year. Okay, so let's see the doneness. Let's see the doneness of the rice. Guys, this is so good. So let's add the butternut squash. And now what we're going to do, I'm going to transfer this and put it on very low heat, because now we are going to, let me just take this because it's really hot. And we are going to cook the shrimp. The shrimp I'm going to cook over, where did I put my pot? Over here. I'm going to heat the pan, season the shrimp with some salt and pepper. Now notice, every time you do shrimp, chances are that the shrimp that you're going to cook, it comes frozen, because it's actually a very perishable item. So it's really common to buy, to sell frozen shrimp. So you want to season on both sides, and you want to make sure that the pan is very hot. Now, the one thing about cooking shrimp is that you don't want to overcook. hold on, we also have to be aware of our risotto in the back. So yes, again, we got this. Oh my God, we got the molten chocolate cake. We can't forget about that. Oh, look at that. You see how the edges are done, but the center is still jiggly? So it's time to take it out. We're gonna leave it here. Let me actually push this to the side. That's another thing about this molten chocolate cake, is that it can handle a little bit of waiting time, unlike a souffle. For example, a souffle, you have to take it out of the oven and serve it right away. With the molten cake, it's okay to wait a little bit. So now we cook the shrimp. Woo, it splashes. Again, the trick about cooking shrimp is not to overcook it. As soon as it starts to turn pink or orange, then you flip it, because you don't want to overcook it. It takes like less than a minute to cook shrimp. Okay, so now we have our shrimp. So you see, as soon as it turned opaque, take it out. It's done. That's the thing too about cooking, guys. Let me just do, I'm gonna make this operation like this. I'm gonna take this, put over here, and we are going to pour the shrimp directly into our risotto. Look at that. The thing about cooking, don't be afraid of cooking just right. A lot of people say like, no, I'm gonna cook the chicken, or cook the chicken and cook the chicken. By the time you cook the chicken is so cooked that it's dry. Don't be afraid of that. You know, the shrimp, it only calls for a minute to a minute and a half of cooking, and it's done, you know? So there we go. Now, let's talk about the way to finish the risotto, because here the risotto is done, right? But the trick about serving risotto is that you want creamy. Risotto is almost like you want to be able to eat with a spoon. Although in this case, you need a fork and a knife because of the shrimp, but you want to finish with a little bit of broth and a little bit of butter. A tablespoon of butter does wonders for the risotto. So let me do that. It smells so good in here. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, so let's taste. Let's see if it needs any more salt, pepper, nutmeg, some cinnamon. I didn't add cinnamon on the one we did in demo. I added cinnamon before. Oh my God. Okay, so let's plate, because now it's serious eating time. Okay, so let's taste this shrimp with the risotto. Maybe a little bit of pepper too. I love fresh pepper. And oh my God, amazing. So good. I also want to show you, because really this dessert, I can't wait for you to try and make it not only once, but like make it a regular in your classic repertoire. Hold on, it's of quentão. So let's cut into this dessert. And of course you can serve it with, you know, any type of ice cream, vanilla ice cream for sure. But I find that other types of ice cream, let me turn the oven off. Other types of ice cream too. In the cookbook, I actually presented the recipe with ginger ice cream, because I think that the ginger cut the richness of the brigadeiro part, you know. And I have served this with pistachio ice cream. I have served with coconut ice cream. I mean, really, you can buy any ice cream and it's totally fine. So look at this. Oh my goodness, look at how runny it is. Let me see if you can see with this. Do you see this, guys? Do you see this runny, like perfection here? Let me get so close to the camera. Look at it. It is so good. Again, a dessert that you can make 10 days ahead of time, leave it in the fridge and forget about it. Put it in the oven for 10 minutes and you get a beautiful dessert done. It's gonna like conquer the entire, Thanksgiving table. You're gonna be the host with the most, really, with this dessert. Let's give it a taste because this is so good. Oh my goodness. I don't get tired of these recipes ever. By the way, they are featured in my cookbooks. They are at My Rio de Janeiro. The risotto is at My Rio. The molten is at My Rio as well. The quentão is on my website. But remember, it's never too early. We are just around the corner from the holidays. So if you want to buy a signed cookbook, I am here. I can sign it. I ship it to you. Never too early to think about the holidays. What else? What else can we talk about? I hope that I have inspired you guys to get into the kitchen, to transfer these creative skills that we develop and culture and cultivate in the kitchen, and that you can apply into your work life, because that's what, the beauty of it. Like when you think about it, right? When you think about new recipes, it open your mind to new cultures, and new ingredients can open your mind to new products, and new combinations can open your mind to new messages, new proposals, right? I mean, that's the beauty. Again, it's the transferable skills. Any questions, any comments, any suggestions? I want to hear from you now.
That brings us to the end of this culinary and cultural adventure. Definitely cultural. Stay healthy and happy. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.